Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining today's IC Realtime webinar. In today's webinar, we will be discussing IC Realtime's new web interface. Now, this new web interface is available on the majority of our recorders, except for a few who we're still conducting trials on, but you can find this new web interface on all of our FX line, our MX line. That includes the MX08 and MX16 recorders, FX 08 and 16 and 24 recorders, and our 6016 recorders. You won't find this yet on our 6032 and 6064, and that will be coming soon. I have muted everyone's microphone at the moment, but I will unmute everyone's microphone at the end of the webinar to field any questions anyone might have. My name is Mike Caballero. I'm one of the national sales executives here at IC Realtime, and let's get started. So, excuse me. As I mentioned, we're going to be talking today about our new web interface. And the first thing that you're going to notice here is that I have this pulled up in Google Chrome. That's part of our initiative that we started 2 years ago to transition all of our interfaces to HTML5. Previous to that, you had to use Internet Explorer and utilize plugins for the web interface, where now all of our IC Realtime cameras, as well as the recorders I mentioned with this new web interface, are using HTML5. So that means you can use any browser that you want to. You can pull up this web interface on Chrome. You can do it on Firefox, Edge, Safari. So basically, any browser you tend to utilize, you can use this new web interface. As you can see here, we have some slight differences in this web interface. Previous to this, our older web interface, when you opened up, it took you right into live view and then had a setup tab. Here you have a landing page, which clearly identifies what you want to do with the recorder. Now we're going to go through some of these one by one. First thing I'm going to start out with is in the, you have your back button here. When you're in a specific menu, you can just go back if you want to go to the previous menu, or you can close with that window. This web interface functions like a browser in a browser. Here up top, you have your time and date settings. You also have your user account credentials. You have your ability to log out, reboot, or shut down. And you also have the ability here to generate your QR code for P2P. Now, generally, I would start from left to right here, from live view to playback and so forth. But really, what this web interface is meant for, and we'll come back to live view and playback in a bit, this live view is meant for configuration. This generally isn't going to be the interface that your end user is going to use. We're always going to recommend that your end user use the either the Smart ICRSS remote client software on their PC or Mac, or they're going to use their mobile application. That's generally where the end user is going to interface with. This is really for our dealers and our technicians to go in with their laptop and comfortably configure the recorder without having to stand in front of it with a mouse and monitor and a virtual keyboard. Here, you can use your own keyboard, you can use your own mouse, especially if you use a laptop, and it's going to make things much easier for you. And that's why I'm going to start here in basic settings. So you may notice here that we have a basic settings, and then we have an advanced settings. Your basic settings is going to be if it's a standard residential or commercial security install, where you're using the integrated PoE switch on the recorder. You're just going to plug those in. They're going to appear online on their own. And then you just want to go through and configure the recorder and the cameras to get this set up, get out and get paid, right? So that's the end goal here. So basic settings is going to be a truncated interface here without all of the options that you would have in the advanced options. Here in basic, you're basically going to have just the options you need to get your recorder up and running in terms of network, in terms of your system configuration, in terms of your users, in terms of your motion detection, your display, and your record schedule. So we'll go into these one by one, and we'll start with system config. So generally, you would have a lot more options here, but under this basic setup, you only have the options you need. You have your general tab where you can name your device. You'll see a device number, your language settings, your video standard, some options here like sync to remote devices, your auto logout times, your navigation bar, and IPC time sync, and your 24 hours configuration. And then you have your date and time settings here. That's all you really need here to go ahead and get your general function set up. Now, next is going to be your network options. And when it comes to network, if you're using that integrated PoE switch, you're just going to plug your cameras in here under your TCP/IP tab. Once you introduce the recorder to the local area network, you can come in here and you can set your recorder to static after it has pulled an IP address, so that IP address won't change on the local area network. Now, other than that, you have a few options for your DNS settings. Most times, you really don't have to mess with this. And then you have your P2P option. Now, many of you who have sat in on my networking and connectivity know that P2P is the far superior and simpler method of remote access. So here, you have your serial number, or you're going to scan your QR code with your mobile device, and that's going to then go ahead and allow you to have your remote access through P2P. After that, we'll come over to users. So this is where you'll see your admin account. You're also going to see your any accounts that you create or allow you to create an account. So, and as a technician back in my day here at IC Realtime, I always advise to create a couple of secondary accounts. That way, if an end user gets locked out, you have your own registry of accounts that you can provide to them for access. Or if you want to keep administrative access to yourself, and then create their own user account settings, or for commercial install, where this might be an office setting, have your multiple different logins for different employees. You also have your OnVIF user here. So an OnVIF user account allows you to go ahead and create a username and password for OnVIF devices. Generally, that's going to be third-party devices using the OnVIF protocol. OnVIF is a third-party standard. Many manufacturers are part of the OnVIF profile, and that's what allows compatibility across different manufacturers. So you would create your OnVIF username here, use that same username and password on your camera that you're adding to the recorder, that is adding with the OnVIF profile, and you're good to go there. Now, next here, you have motion detection. Now, you have your traditional motion detection here, but I would advise using intelligent motion detection if you're using cameras that are supported with intelligent motion detection. Intelligent motion detection, as you can see, is much easier and far superior to your standard motion detection. You don't need to do any camera masking or anything like that. You simply need to enable, select a channel in question where you're going to configure that intelligent motion detection, and then specify whether you want to capture people and vehicles. Then you have display here, and here on display, you're going to have all of your display settings. So you'll be able to configure what you see in display, your time display, your channel display, some image enhancement, IMD preview, which will show you the instances of IMD, your AI rules, that's for your perimeter protection or IBS, which will then allow you to see that on screen as well. Set your scale, your transparency of the actual web interface, your resolution, and your main screen and your second screen configuration functions. Then you have tour, and this is for video tours. If you want to create and if you're not familiar with what a video tour is, that's where you specify a specific channels, you specify a specific split view, whether it's a single split view, quad split view, 9 split view. Once you specify that and the channels in those views, it will then cycle through at a specific interval, like you see here. So every 5 seconds, it'll transition to the next group of cameras, so on and so forth, and it'll keep that cycle going. Last is going to be your record schedule. So this is where you're going to come in here. You're going to specify your recording schedule. You're going to specify whether you want to record 24/7 recording or motion detection, or 24/7 and motion detection. So that'll give you that capability as well. You also have intelligent motion detection, so it will record those instances if you're not using your standard motion detection. So this is your basic setup. This is everything that you need to get a recorder configured and get everything set up, get the install done. get out, get paid, and move on to your next install. Now close these windows here briefly. But next is going to be your advanced setup. So advanced setup is going to have many of the same options. However, you're going to see your full options list here. So under camera, we didn't have a camera tab previously, but now you have your full configuration for all of your cameras. You have the ability to add or remove devices. You have the ability to do a device search, find any devices on the local area network. You have the ability here to then specify those devices and add those devices. You have the ability to manually add, which, like I mentioned, if you're doing OnVIF, this is the method you're going to use. This is also the method you're going to use if you have network cameras as well on a network switch. You have the ability to modify your IP address. And then this bottom half here is your added devices tab. So this is where if you've added any of these devices from the top, they're going to reside here. Or if you have any cameras plugged into the integrated PoE switch, they're going to then appear here as well. You also have your image tab. So you can get all of your image settings along with your encode settings here. And this is very similar to what you've experienced with our previous iterations of our web interface. It's just a fresh and updated look along with that HTML5 functionality. So next, now we have Alert Center, and this is going to encompass all of our alerts. This is going to encompass all of our functions here. So this is where you will configure where in basic you just had motion detection and your IMD. Here now you have your face detection, you have your IBS configuration for your perimeter protection, you have your people counting, you have your heat map, and you have your IMD. You also have available to you all of your alarm info. So any alarm situations that you have, you'll see here. This is where you will subscribe to any of those alarm instances that you want to receive. This is where you will create all of your alarm input configuration settings for your local alarm, your network alarm, your IPC alarm, IPC offline alarms. Here's where you configure your alarm output settings. Here you have your video detection. So this is, again, your motion detection, as well as your video loss detection, your video tampering detection, your video scene change detection, and your PIR alarm. Here you'll have your audio detection settings, as well as your abnormality settings for hard drive configuration, as well as network configuration. Here in the network, you're gonna have your full network list. So where in basic, all you had was TCP/IP and P2P. Now you have all of your ports, your DNS configuration, as well as other network settings such as your UPnP, your email configuration, your SNMP for port sniffing, packet sniffing, your multicast, alarm center, your register tab, your switch tab for your integrated PoE switch, as well as some cybersecurity settings as well. So here you have your security status, and this is for all of your authentications. Some system service functions here, whether you want to allow CGI commands, your OnVIF compatibility, access to your NTP server, whether you want to change your authentication from digest to basic. This is sending your configuration from digest to basics and allow you to use things like control systems that may not support digest authentication. With IC real-time recorders and IP cameras, we use digest authentication as opposed to basic authentication for protection of our recorders. We are a security conscious manufacturer, and we're using only the latest encryption technologies for our IC real-time cameras and recorders. Here's some attack defense configuration settings. So firewall standards, where you can whitelist and blacklist certain IP addresses. You have the ability for account lockouts configuration. You have anti-denial of service attack configurations. and a specific timed allowed list here for specific IP addresses. The ability to create your certificates for HTML5 and some audio video encoding functions. Next, you have your storage tab here. So here you'll have your file manager. This is for whether you want to specify whether to overwrite when the hard drive is full or stop recording, your packet mode and duration, your auto deletion of older files. And then you have your schedule tab, which like we looked at in basic, your hard drive manager to identify the status of your hard drive, some record control functions to indicate what stream you want to record from, and adding snapshots. Your hard drive grouping, where you can group specific hard drives for specific channels, substreams, or mainstreams, and then your FTP backup, for FTP backup to a server. And lastly is going to be your system operation. So here, where in basic, we just had our general tab with our date and time and general, you have your holiday option, RS-232, your display, your tour and task, your user and ONVIF user, your file manager, your schedule here for playback and outputs, and then your system maintenance. You'll have your ability to back up your consistent configuration. Here's where your system recovery tab will reside, and your system upgrade tab. So those are the differences in configuration here. Again, basic settings. That's going to allow you to do basically everything you need to get your recorder up and running for most installs, where your more advanced settings is going to give you your full functionality here from our recorder and IP cameras. Now from there, I'll go to live view, and there's really not much to say here. It's a live view tab, just like any other live view tab, a lot cleaner. You have the ability here, and keep in mind this is a camera that's on a recorder that's on and cameras that are on a test bench, but this is going to give you the ability to again see your cameras. There's a specific limitation on this recorder for only a four split view. You have your PTZ 8-way control here with all of your zoom, focus, aperture, all of your PTZ setup configuration here. So you can create presets, you can create tours, you can create scans, pans, patterns, your auxiliary, use your wiper, your light if you have a software light enabled camera, and your image flip mode. And below you have some of your alarm output actions here. Now, when it comes to playback, you have two options once you enter playback. You have playback, and then you have advanced search. Playback is your standard timeline-based playback. So you'll set up your camera in question. You'll set up your schedule for what kind of recording you want to do. And then you can simply use your specific playback here. This functions very much like our playback for all of our previous web interfaces. You specify your camera, you specify your record type, your time and date settings, you do your search, and then you specify whether you want to export video or not. However, let's close this one here. You also have advanced search. Now, advanced search is much different here. This is going to give you more of a clip-based search. So as I mentioned in my new technology webinar, when it comes to perimeter protection, which is IVS that you see here, as well as IMD, basically what you're specifying for those is people or vehicles that you want to search for. So here under IVS, when I specify my channel here, I'm indicating my channel, my time and date settings, my event type. So if it's a tripwire, then I want to specify whether it's a human, a vehicle, a non-motor vehicle, being something like a bicycle, or all three, and begin my search. What I'll get back is clips of any instances of people, vehicles, or non-motor vehicles on my cameras, and then I can export that video. Much more advanced than your traditional timeline-based search. And the same can be done for IMD as well. I'm going to specify my channel. I'm going to specify whether I want to search for people or vehicles, my time and date, and then hit search. And again, to reiterate, if you're wondering why we have these two different methods of capture, IBS allows you to create those tripwires, those intrusion zones, specify an area of interest that you want to monitor while ignoring everything going on in the background. So you'll have that ability with IBS and perimeter protection to focus in on just a specific area in the scene, not the entire scene itself, where IMD encompasses the entire scene of the video for search of people and vehicles. That's the difference between those two search functions. And then lastly is going to be the info tab. Info is exactly how it sounds. It's going to be where you're going to find your information. Here on the system info, this is where you're going to find information like your serial number, your firmware version, your build date for your firmware, your hardware version. Under hard drive, it's just going to give you some hard drive information. Here under log is where you're going to check if you're looking for any log entries, for things like intrusions, for things like bugs or instances where something may have occurred. Let's say a camera drops offline, you can go back in that log and you can see when exactly that happened, when it came back up, if it's a repeating occurrence. Here under network is going to give you a bit of network information. This is actually going to show you the IP address of the devices that are connected, user login. So the times at which someone logged into this device and what IP address they were at when they logged into, which is good for especially your commercial installs. And then lastly is BPS, and this is going to give you information about the bitrate functions that are going on your camera. It's going to indicate to you your resolution of your camera that you have connected to the recorder. It's also going to give you some information about the throughput that is coming through your recorder. So it's a lot of good information, especially if you're looking to keep below a specific bandwidth that you chose to use. Here's where you can monitor that. So that is our new web interface in a nutshell. It's a fantastic new interface, in my opinion. Again, with all the HTML5 functionality you have here, with a much newer and sleeker look that's much easier to use, much easier to use for your install technicians. I think this is a great feature that you'll really enjoy using when it comes to configuring IC real-time cameras and recorders. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take any questions anyone may have. I do ask that if you have any questions, you go to the top of your Zoom meeting, you go to the Q&A tab, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have there. Looks like we have one in chat here from Andrew. This is a pretty webinar. I'd like to have my techs watch this, but they're always in the field. Can I get a copy of this recording, please? We will be uploading this recording to our YouTube page. Andrew, for your technicians that generally out in the field, if you go to YouTube, you search IC Realtime, you will see our IC Realtime YouTube page. Once you're in our IC Realtime YouTube page, you can then go to webinars and training, and you can see all the recorded version of our webinar, and your techs can watch them at their leisure. Mark, can you send me a list of our cameras and MVRs that this new web iteration does not currently work with what you mentioned at the beginning? Yep, I will definitely get that your way. I apologize here. Just go ahead. Bear with me, and Mark, I'm just saving your email address here on my PC. Right, next question here. Briefly clarify how to set up for remote access, or is it only possible through Smart IC RSS? That's a great question. So for remote access, you have two options here. First, you have P2P. So P2P is a matter of when it comes to Smart IC RSS, which is the remote client software for PC and Mac, you're just going to go and get the serial number. So you're just going to enable P2P here You do want to make sure that your status is online, and then you want to go grab the serial number, which you can get from the info tab. So your serial number here is all you need. Then when you go into Smart ICRSS, the remote client software, you're then going to go and you're going to change your method to add when you go to add devices to P2P. It's going to ask you to name your device. It's going to ask you for the serial number, which you'll enter in there. It's then going to ask you for the username and password of that recorder, and you're good to go. Because with a PC and Mac, you really don't have that ability to scan a QR code. Now, when it comes to ICRSS Pro and ICView, you can just open up your add device, select P2P, name that device, scan that QR code, enter in the username and password, and you've set up remote access through our P2P service. Jonathan, no, I won't be emailing out this webinar. I will be uploading it to YouTube in the next couple of days. Once it's uploaded to YouTube, then you can go to YouTube. You can watch this video. You can download it from YouTube. But we've ceased to be emailing copies of this video. It'll be uploaded to YouTube shortly. Question from Marcel. This came up yesterday, and as far as I know, I'm the only one asked to join. I'm not. Marcel, I'm not really clear on what you're asking here. Okay. And everyone who's in the chat, if you can move your questions and queries to the Q&A tab, that would be great. All right, well, it looks like no one else has any questions at this time. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us on today's IC Real-Time webinar. My name is Michael Caballero. I'm one of the National Sales Executives here at IC Real-Time. Have a fantastic weekend and stay safe.